and welcome to another episode of the Love Procurement Podcast. My name is Kelly Barner, and I will be your host for this conversation. Today, I'm glad to welcome Laura Smith, Vice President of Sales North America from Ivalua, as well as Katie McEwan, the Procurement Girl, to the podcast. So, hi, Laura. Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having us, Kelly.
Yes, it's just awesome to be able to hang out with you all.
I know, and wouldn't it be nice if we were literally hanging out? We're doing our best. We're having a virtual hangout, but it would be nice to all be in the same room. One of these days, we'll have to do that.
We'll have to do that next time.
Yes, girls' night.
Absolutely. So before we get into our topic for today, which is actually an interesting one, we're going to talk about women in procurement and women and procurement. But I want to give the audience a chance to learn a little bit more about each of you. So, Katie, let's start with you. Bring us up to speed by sharing a little bit about your professional journey to this point.
Yeah. So I began my career as a small business owner. I grew up watching my mother cut hair in the kitchen, and I was really inspired by how confident she made the women feel and how beautiful she made them feel. And it was just really put on me that that's what I wanted to do. And so I traded college for beauty school. And then when I became a mother, I was introduced to technology and software, which was great because I could actually be home on nights and weekends. I wasn't in the spa working, and I had that flexibility. And I quickly got introduced to the source to pay process in procurement and technology, and started working with startups and procurement executives on how to get the most out of their tech platform. And those procurement professionals, who I consider my friends and my teachers, taught me everything about business and the power of relationships and partnerships and negotiating and knowing your worth. And I owe them a lot, and it lit a fire in me. So that's what brought me to where I am today.
I think that's fantastic. I love the passion that we're already hearing. And before I go to Laura, I have to ask you the trademark question for this show. Why do you love procurement, Katie?
Oh, so I love an underdog. I love to advocate for those who don't get the support and recognition that they deserve. Procurement tends to be more humble, more focused on integrity and truth, and I deeply respect that. They aren't the best at advocating for themselves or celebrating the work that they do. So really that sparked something in me, and I just love advocating for them and evangelizing for the work that they do because they know everything about every other department, but no other department actually understands what they do and the value that they bring. And I think that that script is getting flipped on its head, and it's just really exciting to see so many women coming into this space and really owning it and talking about the difficulties and the struggles that they are facing and how they're overcoming. Resilience really gets my heart. And I think that's why I love procurement.
And I think that's one of the things, a lot of times we joke about, although I've met a few people now over time, but generally speaking, nobody chooses to go into career in procurement. We all sort of fall in or open the wrong door in the hallway or, and end up in procurement. But that's sort of the beauty of it, that everybody is finding it. And so it's never too late to join our ranks. Now, Laura, speaking of different paths into procurement, tell us a little bit about your story. What brings you to this moment today?
Sure. So first off, I lead our commercial team in North America at Ivalua. And I've been in the source to pay technology landscape for over 15 years now. And also kind of on the side, I lead a lot of women groups. So Women in Sales group at Ivalua just launched, and we have women from 9 different countries.
Wow.
We are spearheading a Women in Procurement group within our customer community this year. And I also lead women mastermind groups in the city where I live in Pittsburgh for women, executive women in leadership. And so it's always been kind of a passion of mine to connect technology, kind of like what you mentioned. I fell into procurement a little bit, into the procurement technology space. And but really love and extremely passionate about seeing women thrive as well. So that's a little bit about me. I'm also married for 12 years, and I've got 4 little kids that are 7 and under. So that keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah, on your toes. And Katie, you mentioned kids. How many kids do you have?
Yeah, so I have 2. They're 3 and 7. So every
great.
time I talk to Laura, it's like, I cannot complain about my life.
One of these days, we just have to get all the kids on screen. We'll just hand the mic over to somebody and we'll have like a group kid conversation about procurement.
There would be one like licking the screen or something.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be pretty.
Or all of
And
them.
that
Or
would
all
be
of
the
them.
episode
Yeah.
that goes viral. Now, before we start digging into the role that women play in this field, Laura, I also want to give you a chance to answer this question. What is it about procurement that you love?
It's a great question. It actually was a hard question for me because I think there's so many facets that I do love about it, and it grew over time. I think what's relevant right now is if you think about the spending power of just one organization to embrace sustainability and choose eco-friendly products, to opt for ethical labor practices, to choose local suppliers where maybe there is underrepresented communities, transforming vendors to be partners and drive new innovation and new products within a company, or even just promoting diversity and inclusion, and thinking about risk. There's so many aspects that procurement now holds the power to be able to influence. And if you think about the collective power of procurement across the globe, I believe they have a unique opportunity and really a responsibility to impact the world to be more socially responsible and sustainable. And really that impacts everyone from you and me to our kids and the next generation. So I love, and I think that procurement it's never been a better time to be in procurement.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I love the fact, Laura, you brought in so many big picture initiatives. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily look at any of those forms of impact that you talked about and say, oh, yeah, that's something only procurement would get. Those are things that everybody can get behind. All companies want, all consumers want. And staying with that big picture theme, we're going to celebrate the role of women in procurement in business today. But before we get specific, let's keep that big picture perspective. Laura, I'll start with you. As we celebrate International Women's Month in March, and then specifically on March 8th, International Women's Day, I'd love to hear from each of you, whether it's a woman from today or a woman from any other time in history. Who do you consider a role model? Who's a standout woman that you think, oh my gosh, she's incredible. If I could or could have met her, it would be incredible.
So this was an easy one for me. This is my mom. She actually passed away when she was 47 of cancer.
Oh, Laura.
But though she was young when she passed away, she probably lived 4 lifetimes in one. She had a very rich life. And I remember from a very young age, she would sit me down and say, Laura, you're going to be a world changer. You're going to change the world. And at first, I didn't really know what that meant being really young, but that developed a confidence in me as I grew older. And I realized that being a world changer didn't mean just being successful, but what it meant to my mom and what she demonstrated through her life was that it meant to give your life away to something greater, something, a bigger cause. And so she always encouraged me to champion causes, to solve problems, to think bigger and serve others, not just yourself, and to lead and show the world a better way. And so today I always think about on International Women's Day, my mom, because it is always a great example in how I lead every aspect of my life, to remember that it's not about me, but it's the key to success is really to give your life away.
And those mom heart connections, right? You've both now mentioned the role that your mom played in shaping where you are. And of course, now being moms, we get the opportunity to carry it another generation. Katie, who's a woman from today or from the past that you think of as a role model?
Yeah, Laura, gosh. I hope I'm through this. That was so
That,
powerful. Thank you so much.
thank you.
That just the impact that a mom could have. That's powerful. So this one was a tough one because at first I started to think about women in history that I hadn't met, right? So Princess Diana and Mother Teresa and all these wonderful women and how they impacted my life. I think about Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
I mean, she definitely influenced my personality.
Absolutely.
But for me, it really is my mother. She had a brain aneurysm and a stroke when I was 8 years old, and she had to learn how to walk and talk all over again. Within a short amount of time, she was back behind that styling chair, doing people's hair, making people feel better about themselves.
Yeah.
She's a very tough and resilient woman. One time
Mm.
she was trimming bushes. She cuts her finger off. She bags the finger and drives herself to the hospital. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh.
so tough, so cool and resilient. And
Mm.
she really taught me that you can't look at obstacles and problems as, something to run from or something to hide from.
Yeah.
It's something that you can embrace and can be seen as opportunities. And that's what she's done. She doesn't complain about the hardships. She just pushes through.
Mm.
That really made an impact on me.
Mm.
And that's it. It's incredibly powerful when something is so personal, right? That you continue to
Yeah.
carry it with you and it motivates you and it shapes the way, not just the way you see things, but the choices that you make on a daily basis. And to both of you, thank you for sharing, first of all, but then let's carry that passion forward
Yeah.
into this conversation. Let's do justice to these amazing moms and the other women that have shaped us. Katie, anytime we do these conversations, you have these days of the year and months of the year where you recognize things. I always desperately want it to mean something when we talk about women in procurement, because I do think there are challenges that we face, but there are advantages as well. So when you think
Mhm.
about whether it's for you or whether it's other people you have conversations with, what do you think it is that's unique about being a woman in procurement?
Yeah, I think it's because we're forced to learn mental toughness and we're able to embrace that nurturing side of ourselves, which is a really tough line
Yeah.
to balance, right? Because how can you be mentally tough but also, be generous with your spirit and your time and to be thoughtful and empathetic and all of those things? Well, I think for women, those things come easy. The mental toughness part is a little harder. I know for me, when I first got into business, I was offended by everything. And it took me a long time to learn that I had to discipline myself to
Yeah.
take back what other people said and put it into practice. So I started just creating mantras like, I'm supposed to be here, I'm needed, I'm
Mhm.
valuable. And all of those things sort of shapes the mental fortitude and created these disciplines that I do every day that help me to overcome whatever obstacles come in the door. I believe that we have a unique responsibility as women to really pave the way and to show women that it's not about being a victim, it's about being an overcomer.
Yeah.
And we need to celebrate women that overcome. And
Yeah.
I think that's a difficult thing to do, especially when there's a reluctance to really champion each other.
Mm.
Yeah. Now, Laura, it's very much a personal experience, but you also mentioned a lot of the different groups that you work with within the sales team, within the
Mhm.
procurement community, and the mastermind group that you mentioned. Whether it's specifically being a woman in procurement or whether you want to broaden it and talk about being a businesswoman, what are some of the unique challenges and advantages that you think we face?
Yeah, first off, I think it's important to continue the conversation and holistically, whether you're women in sales, women in
Yeah.
engineering and technology or procurement, I think we all face very similar challenges. Every year, McKinsey comes out with a study that women in the workplace. If you haven't checked it out, it's a great study. It just came out, I think, in the fall, and they interviewed 30,000 women across the globe. And I think there's a lot of good things that came out of the report. If you look, I think women's representation in the C-suite has never been better. So it's at a high, the all-time high. However, kind of the middle of the funnel for women is still not where it needs to be, and especially with women in
Mhm.
color. Um, Currently, women represent one of every four C-suite leaders. And if you think about a woman in color, it actually decreases down to 1 in 16. So we've
Wow.
got some work to do. For every 100 men that are promoted, 86 or 87 women are promoted. But the good news is, I think procurement is actually at the forefront for some of the change, and like you mentioned, Katie, paving the way for some of the change with an increase in investment in DEI, ESG being at the forefront of some of this stuff. So, and also the good news, and you mentioned this, Katie, for some of the flexibility in the workplace since COVID. There was in that study, that same study, it said that working moms with young kids, 40% of them were not going to return to work, but because of the flexibility in the workplace post-COVID, they were able to stay in the workforce. And so I think that we've come a long way. Today, we're still making progress, and procurement is at the forefront of some of that change. And so I'm excited to get behind that, whether it's a woman in procurement or woman in sales or woman in leadership, that we all can learn more about how to pave ways for others. And like you said, Katie, not be victims, but challenge each other to be overcomers in some of the difficulties that we face.
And I love the idea that we can do this together, right? So Laura, as you think about not only how you form community, because this is effectively a path that we're all walking together. We want to see all of those numbers improve. How do you, or let me say this, what advice would you give any of us watching or listening for supporting other women in professional settings or in an alternate path that they've chosen? But what are some active things that we can step up and do, things that we can say, information we can share, sort of like the survey that you were referencing? What are some action steps we can take?
That was a great question. First off, just simple things, right? You can certainly read books, listen to podcasts. They're wonderful forms of growth and development, especially the Love Procurement podcast. But I believe nothing is better than truly connecting with others and being a part of community. And I used to feel like that was difficult, and it is difficult when you have little ones and you've got a full-time job and a lot of commitments going on, that it ended up for me always being on the back burner of something I should do, like working out and eating clean. Like I just didn't have time for those things.
Yeah.
But someone challenged me once and they said, look for community right where you are. And that really, I started to open my eyes up to around me to say, okay, I've got a neighborhood of amazing neighbors. I've got a community of people right at my workplace. I've got people that my kids hang out with and their parents. And so it was easy for me to find community and just right where I am. And also I started to create community, like create a group right in with your rhythms of life that are simple for you, so that there's spaces for that. And so if you can't find it, create it, but also keep it simple and just look around right where you are and find the community that's already within your lifestyle and your life rhythms. And that for me really, really helped. So those are some active ways you could look around for some ways to get connected.
Yeah. And Katie, I think of you as being one of the most effective online connectors, network builders that we have in procurement. If Laura talked about find the community where you are, let's take this online. What advice do you have for women that are trying to build out or strengthen their professional networks, especially using a platform like LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's one person at a time.
Yeah.
You're not going to give, thousands of women exactly what they need to hear in that moment to encourage them. It's one at a time, sending someone an encouraging note saying, you're awesome, you're a rock star, just keep pushing. I know it's hard, but you've got this. Taking the time to publicly cheer for, young or female procurement professionals or any procurement professional. I have a procurement rockstar campaign where I get to learn about, the professional's experience and what makes procurement rock. And I highlight their profile and in hopes that, they will get some traction on their profile and start building their own community. But Laura, I love what you said about building community right where you are. I mean, I truly believe that we were placed where we are for a reason, and those people around us need us to encourage them and help them to find different ways to really stay in the fight. It's not just about posting on LinkedIn. I mean, that's if you look at the algorithm and like what all the experts say, but truly for me, it was just one person at a time, just building a relationship with them. And Laura, like you said, like, we don't have time. I've got young kids and all of that, but it takes very little time to just jot a note.
Yeah.
And say, keep it up. You're doing great. And I support you and I see you.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think I heard each of you say, sort of a complimentary version of, Laura, you talk about building it out one person at a time. But Katie, you talk about some of the unique ways, like your Procurement Rockstar campaign, that you're going to find different people and bring out what is unique about them. That authenticity, that being in the moment, doing it your way, making those connections real is so incredibly important because there's never enough time. And so if we're going to do something, it had better count, right?
Mhm.
Katie, what are some of the ways that you bring your full and authentic self to the work that you do?
Yeah, yeah. So this was a tough one. And I maybe I'm alone in this, but I feel like identity is tough for women. It's
Yeah,
really hard to
it is.
figure out who you are in business because you want to be like the successful ones, but you really don't have that skill set and you really don't have that personality. So it's all about understanding your identity and who you are and being
Yeah.
able to articulate that. And for me, it's all rooted in my faith and believing something that's greater than myself, that it's not about my identity. It's about the identity that lives within me and making sure that that's glorified. So I can't be ashamed of what I believe or what I say because it stands for something that's bigger than Katie. So I want something that's going to last beyond my tenure of work or what I'm building with my family. I want it to continue, and I can't do that alone. So it's just about owning that anything good in me comes from something higher, and all I have
Yeah.
to do is just make myself open and available to those opportunities and do the scary things, and the authenticity will come out because I have to stay true to that.
Yeah. I love that idea of doing the
Mhm.
scary things, right? If you do the scary things that you believe are good for you and for other people, to your point, the authenticity, you can't force it. You can't say, okay, I'm going to flip my authenticity switch and be real now. You're either authentically yourself or you're not. Laura, how do you
Mhm.
authentically bring yourself into your work?
Yeah, like Katie, it's a tough question for women. I think we all struggle with it, and more often than not, I know I find myself at a table full of many men, and
Yep.
maybe being the only woman, and not always feeling 100% confident in every situation I'm in. But what I've learned and what I've found, and kind of what I anchor myself around, is you never know which part of you that will connect with someone. And, when I bring Laura, the mom of four, Laura, the Pittsburgh sports fan, like Laura, the executive, to the table, you never really know which one is going to connect with someone. And so you open up the door for more opportunities to connect, to go a little bit deeper, to build a connection in a relationship that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been there if you didn't bring your whole self to the table.
Yeah.
And I found that I've had meetings before the meetings because I've opened myself up a little bit more, or was a little bit more vulnerable or transparent in that moment. And so that's challenged me to keep doing that. And what I've found is when I am authentically myself, it lets others do the same, and it lets them put their guard down a little bit more. And let's face it, when we all are our authentic selves, we outperform.
Yeah.
It's statistically proven that when we can be our true selves in any given situation, that we perform at our very best. And so I look now for opportunities to show that, hey, I don't have it all figured out. I don't really know what I'm doing in any given moment, and that's
Yeah.
okay. Like, we're all like, that's why we need each other. That's why we have a team of people. And so that's enabled me to be more confident in who I am, and then enable others to be their confident selves as well.
And I also think it's good for some of that work side authenticity to come home. It's funny listening to you talk, Laura. I was thinking a few days ago, one of my kids had a school assignment that I, of course, got drafted to help with. It was an essay. I'm very valuable all of a sudden now that they have to write essays, but a piece of it had to be read out loud. And so, okay, so I'm going to read this out loud. And as I took my eyes off the page, my daughter said to me, "That was your work voice." And I
Mm.
thought to myself, okay, I did not know I had a work voice. Right. So, and some of this we've all experienced in going through, working from home, like, oh goodness, someone has a Zoom voice, someone does or does not have an indoor voice. But we do have hats that we put on, and we're not even necessarily aware that we're doing it. And I think a little bit of transfer back and forth is
It's
okay.
okay. Yeah.
Exactly, because the less we're thinking about how we're doing things and the more we're putting in energy into doing them, that's what ultimately moves the needle. So we've probed into some different areas of who are inspirational women, how can we work together as a community. Now it gets really tricky. I'm going to ask both of you to go back in time. We're not going to ask anybody how far, but I want to go all the way back to age 13. If you had to go back and talk to your age 13 self, what piece of advice would you give? Laura, let me start with you. So you're right in the mirror, age 13, Laura. What piece of advice do you give?
Well, first off, and not to be funny, but I'll get married one day and I'll have kids and it'll all work out great. So like just to make sure that's okay, because that was a concern of mine.
Yep.
Being 13, but also that I was very performance driven when I was in middle school, of like making sure I got the right grades, and I loved school, and I was very performance driven. So I would tell myself too that talent and performance get you a seat at the table, but they don't necessarily keep you there. And to not overlook the skills that are more inward, like around character building, and the things that are hard. I'd tell my 13-year-old self that things don't come easy that are worth doing, right? Like like things that are average will be easy, but the things that are worth pursuing in life are hard, and not to be surprised by that, but to know that it's also building your character, which is really essential for anything that you do in life. And so, also that I'm tougher than I think I was, and I can take on more than I think I am, and to not be afraid to take risks and to do things that you might feel are a little bit bigger than you. And that's okay. And that's actually where I need to be. And so, I think that's what I'd tell myself.
I think that's fantastic. And I think there's a lot in there that an awful lot of us would relate to. I will say right to that point of like, don't worry, like you will get married. There will be kids.
Yeah.
Just
like, it'll be fine.
Don't stress about that. Katie, all right. In the mirror.
Yeah.
13-year-old Katie, this is like your big moment to travel back in time. What do you say?
It's not that big of a deal. Stop worrying so much.
Like everything.
Yes.
Right? Life is going to hurt. There are going to be moments where you don't think that you have enough. You're going to want to quit, but just hang on a little bit longer, because things are going to change. Things are going to get better. And it's not about being a victim. It's about using those obstacles and those struggles to prepare yourself for your future self. You need to go through these fires. You need to go through the trenches to be able to manage the things that you're going to be given. And without those things, without those struggles, you're not going to appreciate it. So lean into it and embrace it, and stop worrying so much about it.
Because sorry, 13-year-old self, it does get harder.
Oh, it does.
It gets so much harder and so much more complicated, but it also gets richer and more rewarding and
more meaningful.
More meaningful, exactly. Takes you in surprise directions. Laura and Katie, I want to first of all thank both of you for being so open and so sharing. I think this has been a very authentic conversation. I hope people that are either listening in or watching feel the exact same way. I would definitely encourage anybody that's found this conversation to take some of the advice, but then share your own advice wherever you've found this. If it's LinkedIn, if it's Twitter, join the conversation. Reach out to Laura, reach out to Katie, reach out to me. Let us be a part of your community. Laura, before we wrap up, do you have a place that's preferred for people to reach out if they want to get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is great. That'd be perfect.
Awesome. And Katie, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. Same thing. Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap, happy International Women's Day. Happy Women's Month. Let's make this March 2024 really count. Thank you, Laura and Katie, so much for putting yourselves and your energy and your passion into your work every day, as well as into this conversation. Thank you, everybody who has spent a few minutes with us listening in. Please do reach out and let us know that this is where you found us. And of course, join us in 2 weeks for the next episode of the Love Procurement Podcast.